Thursday. We've almost made it through the entire week. Now, here's what's funny. Yeah, I know. My camera just talks to me and stuff. Because it's not online anymore. It's just recording. You have to get all the videos locally. And it keeps screaming to connect to a server. But, yeah, I think it's baseball season. I've been thinking baseball nonstop. So I think that's the pep in the step. I think that's the energy. I could go baseball all day, every day. It's literally an obsession. But we're going to, we're just driving into work again. Happy Thursday. Week is almost over. For the most part, we made it. For the most part, we have retained our sanity. So, yeah, man. All the fun. Driving through a school zone. So, here's what I was thinking about last night into this morning. When I first started listening to Bandmate, and you guys have heard me babble on enough about this. When I first started hearing Bandmate, my thought was, girls don't do this. Because they don't. I mean, the Runaways didn't last. The Bangles weren't really, they were okay. But they did. They lasted about, 9-10 years. Avril Lavigne. She still drops a song here and there, but the Avril Lavigne that I thought was awesome only lasted for 2 albums. Joan Jett, Runaway. So as a solo artist, she sort of kind of lasted, but she just didn't have that. She just didn't. I don't know. She's classic, but she wasn't not the longevity, not the consistency, not the constant improvement. But that was how Bandmate, I kept thinking, girls don't do this. This is different. And then, yes. And then what happened? I ran into, so I knew Scandal way before, but that was from anime. So Bandmate went actually following as a listener of music, not just anime. So Bandmate, and then it went from Bandmate to my first look at Hanabiye. And the first time I saw them, it was my type. And I liked the guitar, but like a lot of people did with Bandmate, I thought it wasn't real. Because Yukina, who was like 4'10", and I was like, that is not coming out of that. That's not real. It's like there's some Gorillaz type of thing going on. But I came back because I ran into Nemophila. I ran into Love Bites. I ran back into Hanabiye. All these bands, you go back into like Trident, another girl band that did not last. Trident didn't last. I think Konami is some level of autistic. I think she is some level of autistic, and beyond her behavior, because she has Yui behavior. Mizuno Yui has that same kind of ticky thing that goes on. I think Konami is some level of autistic, and when you listen to her talk, she's very paced, kind of simple. Maybe. And the thing of the matter is, I have 2 children on the spectrum, and my wife is on the spectrum, and they can follow Konami's guitar all day, every day. They can follow, she just grabs them. I think, yeah. But I ran into all these women who were really putting out good rock and roll music and were doing it for a while. They weren't just showing up and leaving. And so then I started thinking, That's an excellent point. If you go into the early days of Bandmate, you know this. Miku was front and center because Misa is notoriously shy. Akane is, I think, more respectful, traditional than she is shy, because Akane is a ham. But Konami and Misa specifically, Psyche also, they're not out front spotlight personalities. But yeah, Miku, like I said, the greatest Swiss Army knife in the history of music. Anything relating to putting out music and being successful, Kobito Miku has done it and can do it. Not playing. Well, she probably has played drums by now. She probably has. But I thought that there was just something going on in Japan where all of these women are just beating skins off of every drum kit that ever existed. I mean, what was her name? Juno. And I don't know if she's in a band, but I've seen her on the YouTube doing the YouTube drum solo things, and that she can't be more than 4 foot 1/2. She's tiny and just goes off on the drums. And like I said, something was going on in Japan specifically with the females. Okay. Then I learned that Australia, okay, that's good to know, because I had not really listened to Hagare. I know they exist. I haven't listened to them. But Juno was, she was like 14, 15, I think, with those videos, that if you know them, that you know them. But, yeah, just ridiculous. Here's what I'm getting at. I don't think it's just Japan. I think there's something generationally. So if you're in your early 30s, going into your early 20s, is that Gen Z? I'll have to reread that, because I don't know those words. Whatever age group that is, from like your early to mid 20s to your early to mid 30s, something with the women musicians, okay? Because that actually includes Taylor Swift. I don't think she's 40 yet. I think she's mid 30s. But something with the females of this, there's a lot of, yes, they do. There is a lot of Gen X-y types of things going on. In the way the music is written, and in the behavior of the females of this generation. I said, because The Warning. Okay. I knew that The Warning existed. I knew of their collaboration with Bandmate, Show Them. Truthfully, I thought that Bandmate blew them out of the water, because it was obvious that Misa's bass line was holding back. That was not Misa stuff. But that was me as a Bandmate fan watching the collaboration between Bandmate and The Warning. So there was that bias that I now understand was completely unwarranted, because they have two different styles. I have to sniff a little bit into The Warning's catalog. And I'm going to actually sniff a lot of it into their catalog, because their story is also very interesting. They come from a family of musical enthusiasts, but not musicians. If you don't know, they're three sisters, and they're out of Mexico. And I think when I first heard of them, this is what happens for harmful and dangerous activity. Okay. But this is what happens when you kind of have a geographical bias. Because I had heard, when I heard they were from Mexico, I was like, okay. And that was kind of it. Because I did not expect Mexico to produce really good heavy rock. But I listened to them. They have an aura. That's the best way I can describe it. We're very non-helicopter. Which stereotypically is not Japanese. Stereotypically. Once again, you know, we all have a geographic bias to a certain extent. But I am really into. Oh, and so apparently their musical journey started with Rock Band. You know, the video game Rock Band. And as someone who dabbled, and at this stage in life, I realized that whatever I was doing in music was really dabbling. But when I was dabbling in it, I kind of thought I was anti-Guitar Hero and Rock Band because I was like, pick up the instrument and play it for real. But apparently they started off of Rock Band. They did a cover of a Metallica song, and because the file was too large to send to their grandparents, they posted it on YouTube, and that started it. You know, it's a very interesting story, and folks have told me about how they write. I mean, they share writing. There's not necessarily a dominant character. Usually, when you have sibling bands, there's a dominant character. Oasis, for example, those two are constantly going back and forth because somebody wants to be in control. The Van Halen brothers, but I think it was pretty obvious that Eddie was the leader. There is going to be this journey, as they say, with the Warning. That's going to happen. I saw an interview. It was one of those sit-down interviews very early because Akane was still wearing the, what do they call that? The hat of power. And Miku, of course, took control during this interview. Akane, Miku found Kaname knew Akane, and it all kind of went from there. And Akane's hesitation was that girls typically weren't serious about joining this band because girls weren't serious, and she wanted to be professional. She literally said in the interview, professional. And when she said that, it was like someone pressed the button in the back of Misa and she nodded her head yes, like you could see it in their eyes. They went to music school not to learn, to learn theory. Yes, but it wasn't for very long that I noticed. And at this point, when Misa was wearing the hat, I wasn't even, like, that was very early. And so I don't even know of a video. I know pictures where Misa wears, I don't know of a video where she wears the hat. I don't know if they sell that on their online shop. That I'm pretty sure that would make some money. But they were determined to be professional. I don't know if Miku necessarily had that thought. It's an interesting because she seems very playful. But when you look at the way she is, I look at Miku's humility. She's very serious. She was the perfect person to put this together with the style that they're doing. Stars align, you know? Things happen the way they happen for a reason. A lot of us are in relationships and situations, and I guess you could call it situationships, because the stars just aligned. First concert as a 5-piece. I'll have to check that out. I think this is very similar. DT, good morning. I think the Warning story, while not the same, is very similar. I'm thinking this is literally by chance. You get Rock Band for your daughters. And there's bias, you know, there's always bias because we grow up thinking and learning what we think and learn. And like I said, there's something with that generation of females. In the athletics also, because this would include the Caitlin Clarks and all that. You know, we had the I Am Woman, Hear Me Roars of the 60s and 70s. We had the power suit women of the 80s. Maybe, just maybe, these women that are coming up are women who are actually doing stuff. Hate me every bit you want for saying that. But these are women who are actually doing things. Athletically, musically, politically, it's been going on for a while. I mean, whether you love them or you hate them, we've had everyone from Geraldine Ferraro to Condoleezza Rice to AOC. This is not abnormal. But I don't know, maybe because it's coming through mostly in the music and in the athletics. I mean, who was that rugby player down in New Zealand that I think most dudes would be afraid to play against? She retired. But I was watching, if you followed any of the rugby, like I said, she's retired, but this woman was just brutal. I mean, just mugging people as she's running. And couldn't bring her down. And the Warning's first videos. You see, if you roll back a little bit on the channel, you'll see where I mentioned I get a kick out of fandom. Because when you're a fan, you really take the time to not only learn, but to appreciate what you're learning and to study what you're learning. I guess it makes sense because if you're in your, are they 30 yet? Are the girls 30 yet, the Warning? Villarreal, are they 30? So the assumption is they've grown up with all the internet and all the streaming and all of that. And so it's not so you know what? Maybe that is exactly what it is. That is part of this generation that you can really aggressively pursue whatever you're into because online. You know what? That's interesting. It used to be if you wanted to study something or if you wanted to get into a certain scene, you had to get up and travel and go somewhere. And I think that a lot of us still think in a way that, yeah, I don't want my little girl traveling across the country to do this, that, and the other, or traveling around the world to do this, that, and the other. We're always a little more protective of the girls. Once again, you can kind of hate it, but that's kind of a reality. The boys, go on out there and do what you need to do. The girls, yeah. Gotta protect the girls. Well, if you grew up in the age of internet, the females can experience virtually everything safely. Because that's part of the reason why, some people call it the toxic masculinity. I don't know. To me, I just call it protecting the females. That's really what it boils down to. It's how my dad raised me, I guess you could say. Maybe that's why. Is this the first generation that is full internet? Because if you're like 40, you're 40, that means you're born in 86. Yeah, if you're 40, you kind of haven't had the internet your whole life unless you were just in that environment. See, this ended up being a rambling, but it's curious to me. It's very curious to me. And now, see, once the wheels are turning here.
Pay attention.
Always pushing forward. Always pushing forward. Maybe that's part of it. Because I'm thinking in the silence, and one of the things, if you ever took a speech class, or if you ever stood in front, the worst thing is dead air. And I just gave you dead air. But I think, and it's really amazing to me, even pro wrestling, but that's not something you can do virtually. You kind of have to put yourself in dangerous situations as a pro wrestler. And that's another thing, that recently the females in pro wrestling have been just tearing it down. It's been really, there's something generationally, there's a shift. Like I said, there was a time, happy Thursday, there was a time when I'm thinking, okay, hear me out on this. And folks who are older in my age, you may vouch for this, I don't know. My generation, for the most part, the females were still kind of expected to be somewhat domesticated. Somewhat. Yes, you could shoot for your career, do this, that, and the other, but the general expectation was still marriage and children. For reference, I'm 52. So we're talking early Gen X here. And there was a rebellion in that generation because you had there were a lot of free wills amongst the females, and it kind of rolled downhill from the 60s kids, but yeah. I think with the females now, we have now raised our girls to the point where, yeah, family and the domestic obligations are a genuine option. This is my thought, an option. I don't think we put that on, if you have a woman and she's 35 and she's not married and doesn't have children, I don't think we care. I think it used to be that we were wondering. Maybe that has something, that maybe that's related. I mean, a complete life hiatus for all of 27, that's really, look, do you know how hard those women have worked? You know how hard, if you know who they are, you know how hard they've worked. taking a year off is a drop in the bucket for the work they put in. And that's the other thing. Bandmate, The Warning, Hanabiye, Love Bites, even Baby Metal, they put in work. Just work. They're always on tour. They're always out doing something. I don't think the female performers of the past really hit it like that. See, now I give myself more work to do, because I really would like to kind of figure that out. And this is how this all started. I would have this conversation literally if I were by myself in the car just talking out loud. It's kind of what happens. And yeah, so here we are. So this is kind of what you would see anyway. But yeah, early to mid 20s to early to mid 30s, this generation, we're looking at the females. Started in Japan, and when I think about it, like I said, The Warning, they're in that range. Like I said, I think Taylor Swift is in that range. You know, your Caitlin Clarks, a lot of your WNB, because I think even, who's the lady that, well, I'm not throwing opinions in here, but the woman that got in jail in Russia, Brittany Griner, I think. But I think she's not late 30s, I don't think. But yeah, so now I'm going to sit here and ponder of it. Work ethic, yes, and that's what Akane said. She said the girls are generally lazy. She didn't want to get involved. And I think they actually had a moment where she chewed the rest of the band out for being lazy. And she still goes through that routine based on what I say. It's a warm-up every morning. That work ethic, because even if you go with the rawest of these bands, and I would call that Hanabiye, their style is really cool, but they're different. That kind of growl that Yukina does, she practices that. She's been practicing that and improving on it every day since middle school. Asterism, I had heard of that before. I know I started listening to, I know I'm mispronouncing it, Koiai, and I pronounce it Kawaii because I don't know enough Japanese to even contemplate pronouncing it properly. For all I know, it's an acronym. But they have two really good guitarists, really good, and they sound very mid to late 80s. So, and that's the other thing. All of the music that's coming out, The Warning is straight out of the late 80s. I mean, I could see them, you know, in a young, like opening for like someone like Gin Blossoms or something like that, late 80s going into 90s. The Warning is just, yes. So because I had lived through that generation, it's easy to relate to. You know, Love Bites, they're just that anthem metal. Love Bites is fun. And I think my 12-year-old is taller than all of them. But I've spent a lot of time as an adult really not being happy with my options so far as new music is concerned. It's kind of like so this is a similarity. I'm a pro wrestling enthusiast. I spent a lot of time being bored out of my wits with pro wrestling. but I kept watching. So musically, I am starting to really understand that there is some really, really, really good rock music out there. And it's new, if not newer, and it's coming from a lot of females. I think for some odd reason here in the States, we've been watered down with the grunge and the hippity hoppity stuff. You know, we like I said, Avril Lavigne personally is one of the biggest disappointments ever, because when she turned to that girlfriend, little mama stuff, like, oh, just stop, just stop it. But in music, a lot of the new and newer stuff that is really good is driven by the females. Equate that to pro wrestling. When did pro wrestling really start being good again? When the Four Horsewomen hit the scene. I say that match between Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch at NXT TakeOver, was it Respect? No. Might have been, one of the takeovers. One of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Anything with Sasha Banks is great. Not so much as Mercedes Moné. But the women were just tearing it to shreds. And even now, the newer wrestling, the better stuff is coming from the females. And that's the world today, I guess. There's something with this generation. And I'm appreciating it. And that's kind of all I got here. I do want to say something, though. Somebody made the comment that they are reporting this for dangerous activity behavior, and that's fine. I don't understand the petty. I don't understand, first of all, the unsafe thing. Because, yeah, I'm about close to the office too, so that's where we are. But because for those who don't know, I'm related to police officers. For those who don't know, multiple police officers. For those who don't know, they've been in the car, or one of them has been in the car when I did this, sitting right there, and you don't see them. Because they were looking for violations. For those who don't know, I have police officers that watch. So, I have said this before. I will say this repeatedly. I have no issue with someone who dislikes what this is. Because really all it is some dude in a car going to work. That is literally what this is, a dude in a car going to work. So, if a dude in a car going to work and talking, now what you don't see is there's not button pressing, I'm driving a car, you just happen to be recording it. So if that bothers you, then I've said it before, I genuinely appreciate your concern, because ultimately we don't want anyone getting hurt unnecessarily or avoidably. We never want that, right? But yeah. Go ahead. And we'll see how that goes. And that's what I got for now. So, happy Thursday. As you see, I'm in the tunnel. Enjoy, peoples.